woman that is anointed and appointed for such a time as this. She was active in the medical profession when the Lord released her from healing and ministering to physical disorders, that she might become a midwife in the kingdom and usher us through the throes of labor and place us in the birth position that we might be ready to push forth everything that God put on us. I want you to stand to your feet and receive this mighty war horse, this woman of God, as she comes all the way from Brooklyn, New York, Evangelist Jackie McCullough. Come on, make her welcome. Come on and make her welcome.
This great preacher, I don't define her as a woman preacher, because sometimes men, they make that statement to minimize the excellence and the credibility and credulity of the individual who is being present. You know, what do you think about Pastor McCullough? Oh, she's a great woman preacher. I tell him, no, she is a great preacher, period. Amen. And
we've had what people call the best of the best. I mean, there's not anyone that we haven't had here that they say are the best preachers. In my estimation, my personal opinion, this is the sovereignty of God bringing Jackie and Reverend McCullough in at this time. She, in my estimation, is the greatest preacher on the earth today. Now that's saying a lot.
And I can say that she has been a blessing in my life and in the life of this ministry. I'm so moved by her dead-on pinpoint accuracy in the word and the anointing that supports what she preaches.
And how would you say over the years that has your ministry stayed the same in terms of evangelism? Has it evolved? Have you kept the same voice, found a new voice, or has it been the same consistent person since then? Over time, have you seen sort of an evolution of your preaching?
Well, yes. You know, when you're young out there and you're traveling, you're evolving, you're growing. It was a whole new life for me. You know, getting on a plane, getting off a plane, you know, sleeping in hotel rooms. And initially, for the first couple of years, I traveled alone. I didn't have someone traveling with me, which is not wise for anyone. So I would come home, drop my suitcase in the middle of the floor, and my suitcase would not be changed, you know. And then when I got up enough energy to do my laundry and get myself together. So initially it was just a very different situation. And I wanted to stay home at my church because my church was growing, Elam was growing, things were happening. And I felt like I could sit in the background and help everybody else preach and run evangelism or the women's department or whatever. But the Lord just kept throwing me out there. And so initially it was women's seminars, initially revivals, going to do women's conventions and whatever, and traveling hither and thither and thither. But, you know, later on, things changed. The medical mission, that's another situation. Being more intentional, knowing that the ministry that the Lord gave me has an instructional aspect, a challenging aspect. So it started shifting as times changed, where it was no longer getting people to stand up on their feet and scream. It was now wanting people to sit down and listen. And wanting people to sit down and change, wanting people to sit down and grow. And then as the church changed, the church world changed, where people were looking for, you know, gain, materialistic gain and prosperity, where religion now might have become the opium of the masses, so to speak, where people were looking for a high. And my messages were not necessarily high-oriented. So the appointments change. So now my ministry was more relational, going to places where I have a relationship, where I have an investment. For instance, Allen Amy Church has such a wonderful memory, and we still have a relationship. When they first started in the small church, the Lord led me to that church, and I introduced praise and worship in my preaching, and it changed their praise and worship. I'm not saying it because I'm bragging. They will tell you, sometimes they remind me, and sometimes I forget. But I've been a part of the evolvement from the small church to the school and now to the cathedral, and I've watched that church grow and the ministry growing and the flakes, impact that whole neighborhood. So I feel connected to that. So that's where the ministry moved from, just moving from running here, running there, into now relationship, connected ministries, going in the same direction, supporting each other for the furtherance of the gospel. So if that explains the shift, that's exactly the way I see it. Of course, as you get older, but I've never been a run up and down the aisle preacher, with my hand behind my ears. That's never been my kind of thing. But I did move around initially when I was younger, but I've always been one to stay behind the pulpit. But as you get older, you're much more wise in how you minister. Now, I'm still long-winded. I'm still trying to figure out why I can't be like Pastor Robin. She does it in 50 minutes and kill you. I still got to, base you and season you, and put you in the refrigerator and take you out and then put you in a slow, baking. I wish I could do it differently. I'm doing better now. It's not 2 hours like it used to be. It's cut down some, even if no one will say amen to that, but it has. But it has changed. I see now relationship. Am I a part of where God is taking this church? Is this church or this assignment a part of where God is taking me? So that's where I am in ministry right now.
Wow. So if there were one message that you would want people to hear that embodied who Dr. Jacqueline McCullough is as a preacher, what would it be?
Well, right now, my emphasis is on the remnant. There is a popular religion and there's biblical religion. Just like in Israel, popular religion and the religion that the true worshipers, the true priests and prophets adhere to. That's where I am. Because there is such a polarization in the church world where we're actually seeing the church split down the middle. Either you're going to be liberal or you're going to be biblical. So right now, my emphasis is on biblical theology. What does that mean? It literally means going back to the Bible, looking at the Bible in its soil, looking at the historical, cultural, aspect of the Bible, hermeneutics, looking at the language, the syntax, looking at the original language, studying the characters, looking at the history, looking at all of that to try to come to the closest meaning of the text possibly, so that we can know what the author is saying to us today. That's where I see myself, preparing others, mentoring, discipling, motivating, preparing people for their eternity. Do I sound old?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So let's talk about, again, the fascinating thing with you, and I hope everybody sees this through the sort of the documentary, and the people who are sort of chiming in and talking about these different topics are the wonderful extensions, and you're not a sort of, one-sided person, and it's fascinating to sit here and see all of the different sides. So I'd like to just talk about some of those different sides. Of course, you know, I'm particularly interested in your book writing and the couple of books that you've written and the several books that you have still yet ready to be birthed. Can you talk about at what point in your life did you say, in addition to doing medical missions and being a pastor and an evangelist, what emerged in sort of your world to say I should start writing?
I was on the plane early in my travels, and the Lord started speaking to me on the plane. And I wrote this book, my first book, Daily Moments with God in Quietness and Confidence. It's just a book of meditation. And when I sat on the plane and I felt whatever I felt, I found the scripture and I wrote it. I knew my life. So that's my first book. The second book, prayers, you know, unconventional prayers. I feel like sometimes our prayers are just, you know, one-sided. It doesn't have a broad scope. For instance, prayers between a daughter and a mother working out their differences and articulating it before the Lord. Prayers for a prayer for someone who is dying of AIDS. What do you say to the Lord? How do you cross over? A prayer for a mother who is expecting a baby and the father of that baby. What does the father say to the Lord about his pregnant wife? I mean, my mind just went that way, and I just started writing prayers, of course, laced with scriptures and whatever. But the book that really, I feel, did not get enough press, the prayer book went straight to the top, but somehow this book did not get there. And I think it's because people are not ready to deal with the fact that their souls are not satisfied. It's called Satisfaction of the Soul. And it hits the core of why people can be in church and not be satisfied with God. Why people can be in a godly marriage and have an extramarital affair. Why people can be successful in ministry and end up, you know, on drugs. There's something missing. And it's because we want everything else. We have bought into the world's philosophy or the world's idea that something else can fill the inner man. But God can't do that. And even if he can do it, I don't like the way he does it. I really want it to be done the way everyone else seems to be getting it. So that book, Satisfaction of the Soul, was a tremendous book. It talks about father issues, how we have been abandoned by our earthly fathers, but we are picked up by our heavenly Father. So that's a wonderful book. The recent book now that's going to be published, it talks about, you know, we looking at one side of our life. And in the Christian church right now, everyone is looking at the economic issues, looking at the problems of living in a world that's falling apart. But they never flip the other side to see God is writing a script that has nothing to do with what I see. What is the other side of this?
All right, so let's talk now about your call into the pastorate. And I know you talked about a bit about how you sort of resisted the call. Let's talk about the call to pastorate and how and when you sort of started Beth Rafa.
Well, you know, because I traveled extensively and because people were so used to seeing me in that, you know, image, with that image of being an evangelist, many people, quite a few of them men, told me that I was not a pastor, I was more of an evangelist. And I believed it very, very conveniently. I embraced it because in my mind, pastoring was a lot of work, intense work. I didn't take it very lightly You know, you go to a church, you preach, and you wouldn't care if the people like you or not, you're leaving. If you drop a bomb message, you just probably won't go back, so it doesn't matter. If you challenge them real, strongly, and they're up in arms, you shake the dust off your feet and you keep going. So that was kind of a very comforting thought for me. And people, Pastor Robin, other people around me, the people who worked at Daughters of Rispa, kept saying, why don't that pastor, Dr. Carolyn Showell, would say to me, McCullough, why don't you just start your own church or whatever? And I would get so annoyed and so angry because I didn't want it to be a natural recourse. Or you're out there traveling now and you're getting older, so go open a church. I couldn't embrace it like that because it was so serious to me. But I felt the Lord tugging. Why you get so angry when somebody mentions it if it's not God? Why aren't you calm? So I had to really search my own spirit, and I said, okay, I will do it, but I'll do it on my terms. I'll go to the bookstore, this cute little, quaint little bookstore, and meet with my family. I remember the first service we had, it was my family, Reverend Angel, Pastor Cleve, Reverend Margaret, just quite a few of us, the founding members of the church, and my dog. And we had this cute little service, and then we would close down and quietly, as if it's a secret order, and walk across to the restaurant, Tuta Pasta, and sit down and have fellowship. That means, okay, God, I'm just negotiating now. Quiet yourself. I'm doing it. Don't say anything. Like this? Please like this. I was so restless, so, uncomfortable and irritable. I was making people's lives miserable because it was not what God was saying. And coming home one day on the plane, Reverend Wanda said to me, she said, Pastor McCullough, first of all, why are you hiding? And why don't you let people know? And Pastor Pat McKinstry from Toledo, Ohio, called me just as I was getting ready to go on my one Jamaican trip. And she says, if you don't do what God has called you to do, you will not be happy. She says, you are struggling with the next level of assignment. And I cried. So when we went to Jamaica, we went to this Bible college with all these young students up in the hills of Jamaica. And I didn't care if it was in Halifax, hell, I was going to make the announcement. That's how much I was pressed by the Holy Ghost. And I announced, and many of the people who were at, in Daughters of Rispa and my friends, they heard it and they rejoiced. Angel was there, the young lady who gave the history of the church. And we came back, and I still wanted to just do it in the bookstore. And Reverend Wanda said, Pastor, everybody starts in the hotel. The Lord says, go upstate. Even my dad said to me before he died, go upstate. The Lord is moving you out of Brooklyn. And a dear friend of mine, Audrey Singletary, and her husband, Charles, they were affiliated with the Holiday Inn. They had connections, and they made the connection, and we started our services at the Holiday Inn off Route 5, or Exit 5 rather, on the Palisades. And we would pack up, bring out instruments, have service, and then we'd go home. And people started coming because I obeyed. And people's lives who were shattered, lives that were shattered, started being healed because I obeyed. And I could sleep at night because I obeyed. Thus, Beth Rafa was formed. One of the members of the church, he's not with us right now, Pastor George. We were struggling once. What should we name this church? And I know I'm going backwards. And we wanted to name it House on a Rock. I said, no, because I only have hard-headed, stubborn people. I don't want no House on a Rock. And then he said, well, what about Beth Rafa? Your ministry is about healing. And it struck a note in my heart. I said, okay, let's call it Beth Rafa, the House of Healing. And here we are, 10 years later.
Beth Rafa was birthed in Beth Rafa was birthed in Pastor McCullough in August of 2001, and I know that personally because of the spiritual bond that was, I think, generating or growing between the two of us. You know, it seemed like God favored me and allowed me to pray at a particular time in August. I actually interceded for her. He showed me that she was having some difficulties in accepting the call to the pastorate. So I remember it clearly, how he brought me right into prayer, and I curled up like a baby, just, interceding for this woman of God. And then October of 2001, Daughters of Ritzpah, under the direction of Pastor McCullough, took the Word Alive medical mission crusade to Portmore, Jamaica. And it was there on October the 14th in 2001, on a Sunday evening, in a little town called Monique. We went to minister to some students in a schoolhouse on a hill. It was a hill. It was a hill. It was a hill. And we went up this hill. I think it was called Devil. I don't know. But anyhow, we went to Monique, and it was a schoolhouse with teenage students that she was ministering to. And when Pastor McCullough took the podium, she began to give an announcement. And if you didn't know any better, you would have thought that she was going to announce that she was engaged or that she was getting married. And her announcement came forth that she had this call to the pastorate. And she gave the whole story about a friend in Ohio and how she encouraged her and told her that she had to just go ahead and do this thing. And I paraphrase it and make it short. But the point is that she made that announcement in this schoolhouse in Monique, Jamaica. And when she made the announcement, I will never forget it. I jumped to my feet. I leaped on my feet. I was sitting there. Reverend Jackie and Reverend Robert Eady were sitting behind me. I think people might have thought I was a little crazy because I knew that this was coming. I knew that God was birthing this thing, my participation in Biblion and the spiritual connection that was being made there. And so I just remember leaping to my feet, and I hollered and I hollered and I roared and I roared. And that night she preached the message, "You're chosen." And then I remember getting back on the bus to go back to the hotel and sitting on the bus with Pastor Robin and Reverend Jackie, and we were just talking about it. And it was just a blessing because I needed a church home. I needed a pastor. And the Lord was so wonderful that he blessed me and favored me with Pastor McCullough.
Beth Rafa actually came about, through Biblion. Biblion had the makings. It was just evolving into a church, even though we didn't mean for it to evolve into a church. We didn't, even as we saw it happening, we I guess even tried to pull the reins back on it because we didn't want other churches to think we were competing against them, and we just wanted to be a ministry that would support the churches and support the people, and Pastor McCullough's gifting in terms of teaching, and that's what we did. But eventually things started to evolve in that way. Those people that came that would volunteer at the bookstore, they became even some of the ministers at Beth Rafa. Those were the charter members, the ones who actually were volunteers who helped out in the teaching, keeping the records, doing the finances for the classes that she taught, because so many different things came out of the actual happenings and workings in the store itself. So the church initially started out with that faithful few that helped out, and thus Beth Rafa began with the very things we learned about. You know, I never really knew too much about all the high church stuff, but I did learn creeds and prayers that you read out of the Common Book of Prayers. This is the whole ecumenical stuff. It was just really exciting. Just wonderful things that we got out of it that I learned at Biblion, through different things happening at Biblion, and then implemented it at Beth Rafa. In our classes, we had announcements. In our classes, I did her sermons. I wrote out her sermons. Well, she wrote out her sermons, and I typed them. And I did the creeds and learned how to do the creeds. She taught me how to say the creeds. She taught me how to do collects. She taught me what they were. We did classes that actually became, in the bookstore, the classes actually became the first classes for our biblical studies class at Beth Rafa. The biblical, or I want to say, the spiritual growth classes that we have on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. Those are actually the classes that she taught at Biblion. Each class that we had there is now a class in the biblical studies, or I should say the spiritual growth classes on Sunday morning. So it actually just evolved into a church. I see so much in the way of what happens with the ministry in terms of how it's evolving. You see lives changing. You see people growing. You see people coming from all walks of life. One of the things I love is that it's not just churched people. These are people that are coming in from the highways and the hedges that are being compelled to come and see Jesus. And that was there's one message that Pastor preached at Beth Rafa. One of the many monumental messages, they're coming to see Jesus. And it just seems that they have a hunger. It's like God is finding them from wherever they are and scooping them up and sending them our way. And to see how people have changed over the years, the ministers, growing, changing, learning how to preach the word, the teaching and the preaching, learning how to be theologians and scholars, and to how to hermeneutically do different things, or to be sound, if you will, hermeneutically. It's just really a wonderful thing. You do see change, and it doesn't just, it started out with just a one-track situation. This is the way we're going, and now it has so many different arms and facets to it. It's just almost, amazing to see so many ministries coming out of just Beth Rafa alone. I've seen Pastor McCullough transform as a pastor. Over time, it has really been tremendous what I have seen. Initially, she liked being able to hit it, and jump and leave, just say what she has to say, drop the bomb and go home. And she didn't really have to deal with members. She didn't have to deal with the work and the labor of having to be responsible for the sheep. I used to know that the Lord was saying to me that she would pastor. But she would be so against it that I would say to myself, well, maybe I missed God. So for years, I dismissed the fact that she would pastor. Once she began to answer the call, I saw the burden come. I saw the nurturing come across. And it's so funny because even I've had friends who used to come to the church, come to Beth Rafa, and they say, boy, she's different at home. She's more of a nurturer, even in her teaching and in her preaching. And then how she's able to switch it when she goes out to minister. Even the becoming more of like a pastor's pastor in her teaching and in her preaching, not going back to evangelism, but knowing how to bring the word and now become a help to so many pastors now who need guidance and who need assistance in any way possible with God's people. I also see her beginning to really, she's a great nurturer. She loves her members. She always says that if you want to be her biggest enemy, mess with her converts and her children and her young people. That they're defenseless. So she'll really come after you with the young lambs and the young sheep. that that really has shown me that she really has a burden for sheep. We talk regularly, and we're always talking about what's the best way to handle God's people. And I've learned tremendously from how she's evolved over the years.
How, in your eyes, has it evolved to what it is today?
The first thing is I have grown. There's a difference in being an itinerant preacher and a pastor. I have grown. I have learned how to listen. I've learned how to be rebuked. I have learned how to extend mercy. I have learned how to ignore insults. And I've learned how to take the long haul with people. You know, I've never believed in throwing people away. But walking in a pastoral position has taught me. I've learned how to recognize God's ministers. I've learned how to see the gift and make a commitment to that gift, even if the person can't see it in themselves. I've learned how to see people where they are and not where I want them to be. And the most valuable lesson is I've learned to let them go.
One of the unique things about Beth Rafa is the worship and your spontaneous songwriting. Take us back a bit to the first album that you created, as well as this last one, and sort of talk to us a little bit about your songwriting and then how that relates into sort of the fabric in Beth Rafa as the worship.
I have to go further than that. When I was in St. John as a young woman, probably maybe about 18 or 19, about that age, we were in a revival service, and the Lord moved on me and told me, go and sit at the piano and play. And I've always been an obedient person to the Lord, even when it's ridiculous. Lord, anyone who has walked with me knows I'm going to say yes. You know, I may give him a little lip, but I'm going to say yes. Even at my chagrin, even running the risk of losing everything. That's been early on in my life. And I sat at the piano and I started banging. And the young people started giggling. And the evangelist rebuked me and told me that I had an off spirit. And of course, that devastated me because I did already feel off. And for her to confirm it, now I really need to be exercised. Something is wrong with me. And when the Lord, years later, you see, at that point, somebody should have gotten me and said to me, what does this mean? What do you think this means? Or let me pray with you and see what this means. It may not mean that you have to play, but it may mean that there's something about music that God is instilling in you or has instilled in you. But when, people don't do stuff like that. This is why Beth Rafa is so important, because even with the children, we once we spot something in a person or in a child, we take them there so that they would not be abused or misused. Years later, I guess in my 30s, the Lord said to me on the plane, in the bathroom, the side of my bed, at the kitchen table, write these songs. The first song was in a hotel room in Pennsylvania. where I was in this college town. And I woke up one night and the Lord said to me, I'm not finished until my glory can be seen. And I wrote the whole song. Then the pastor of the church was a musician, and he put music to the song. And then the song was rearranged by another friend. That was my first song. And then every time I sat down at certain times, it would just come on me. It's not something that said, oh, I'm going to write a song. I would sense a great, desire to write something. And I would hear the music and I couldn't sing it. Thus the album, This Is For You, Lord, was formulated. And Pastor George Hyman was working for the ministry at that time. And I said to his sister, Reverend Wanda, you sit here and write the music to this song, these songs. Because I said to the Lord, these are poems. The Lord said, I said songs. She says, no, I can't do it, but my brother can. So he came and he sat and wrote the songs. And gospel-centric. At that time, Vicky Latayad was, the owner or president of Gospel-centric. And she received the songs. And Kevin Bond rearranged the songs. And we went to Jamaica and we made the first album in this wonderful amphitheater where there were almost about 10,000 people.
Can we talk a bit about a new sound and how that happened?
Well, I don't remember exactly what month or day, but we have what we call our Holy Blaze service at 6:30 every Sunday evening. The young people asked for this time because they felt that they didn't have anything to do on Sunday, during the summer particularly, and they wanted to have a service. It's not young people anymore, it's everybody's service. And we always have a speaker for our services, but this particular evening, I got up and the worship was so strong and powerful and just consuming. I can't explain to you. We were just there, almost in the face of God, loving Him, praising Him, glorifying Him, magnifying Him with the instruments, with our voices, with our hearts. That atmosphere was charged with true worship. As Jesus said, the Father seeketh such to worship Him. It's in that atmosphere that I started to move in the prophetic. And we know that that's biblical. When Elisha got ready to prophesy, he said, call for the minstrel. Something about music and prophecy. For those of us who are charismatic, for those of us who are not charismatic, it sounds ridiculous. But we started praising the Lord, and as I was praising the Lord, the prophetic came. And it became a warfare praise. The war is on, we're going to win. Oh, yes. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. So it was just a continuous call and response kind of thing with the music, with the prophecy, with the singing in tongues. It was just a cataclysmic kind of expression. We had no clue that it was going to be so powerful and penetrating. Atmospheres, hearts, lives, changing people. We had no clue. We were just enjoying the Lord and moving out, into the realm of praise and worship and prophecy. And that's how it was birthed.
So let's talk about Precious JEM Ministries and what that means now, and sort of what's the purpose and how has it evolved from what Daughters of Rispa was.
Well, I felt that Daughters of Rispa had come to its end. The story of Rispa is that she is fighting off the buzzards and the animals from off her dead Saul's grandsons, and seeking a burial. Instead of leaving them it's a disgrace to leave the body, not buried or not in a grave. And she was seeking honor for the dead. And David heard and saw that she'd been sitting on this rock, waving off the buzzards of the carcasses of her dead children or grandchildren. And the Bible said David heard her and gave them an honorable burial. So Rizpah was in a season where it ministered to a lot of women who were dealing with vexing issues, children in prison. Not that that doesn't exist now, but that was the era of the ministry. But then it was time to bury the dead. And we thought it's time to come up with a new name for where I am now. And precious gem. And the word precious is so powerful. I was reading in the Bible about jewels. You know, Christians or God's people are sometimes called jewels, but they're not gems in the sense of opal and sapphire, but they're his treasures. And I consider myself one of his treasures. We have this treasure in earthen vessel. And I think I'm one of his possession. Treasures here means possession. I'm his and he is mine. So with that in mind, we took on the name Precious, and then of course my initials, JEM. And because that's where we are, I am totally sold out to him. Not that I wasn't before, but it's gotten worse. You know, so, and there's no turning back. So Precious Gem is very appropriate, the whole notion of it for where I am now. What else do I want? You know, where else do I want it from?
Let's talk a bit about your obtaining your doctorate and how that sort of evolved or sort of contributed to the founding of BRBI.
That's very important. Now, when the Lord, if you backtrack, when you asked me, and I talked about earlier about giving up my quest, my desire to become a medical doctor, and the Lord said, take off your lab coat. He also said later on that you are going to become a doctor. I thought in my limited mind that somewhere along the way I was going to go back to medical school. But it was very clear to me that's not what he meant. He meant a doctor of ministry. He's so interesting to me because he speaks so differently than I do. Don't you find that interesting?
Yes, ma'am. And
also very frustrating, because I'm always trying to put his vocabulary, my vocabulary, into his mouth, and he doesn't pay me any mind. So he really wanted me to know I didn't take anything from you. If nothing else come out of this discussion is we always think he's robbing us of something because we're so desperate to win that we can't trust that he has all things. And he's not withholding anything from us. It's just that he wants to give it to us the only way that's good for us, that will bring him glory and will bring us satisfaction. So I wearied him about going back. Okay, so I can't be a medical doctor. Can at least go to a seminary? So my former bishop says, no, don't go to a liberal seminary. Go to NYU, take philosophy, but just don't go mess up your mind with this liberal theology. So I went to NYU and got my master's in philosophy, but I still wanted more of biblical studies. And so finally, I tried to go to several seminaries. I wanted to go to Fuller. I wanted to go to New Brunswick. Somebody told me I could go to Oxford. But I went to the Jewish Theological Seminary for 3 years doing non-matriculated subjects or courses. And now they said to me, you have exhausted all of your courses. Now you'll either have to come in the program full-time, because we have nothing else to offer you, but you have to stop working. Other seminaries said the same thing. And the Lord said, I didn't call you to stop pastoring, to go to seminary. I'm going to create a program for you. And I was on my way to Jamaica to do the medical mission, and Amy Gardner said to me, why don't you leave your application here with me and I will forward it to Drew Theological Seminary. I said, I really don't care, Amy. I'm not going to worry about this anymore. Do whatever. That's the kind of attitude. And she processed the application, sent in my transcripts. And when I came back, I found the letter of acceptance on my bed. By that time, it didn't matter. You see, it's always when it doesn't matter that it matters to him. Isn't that wonderful? Because when it matters so much to us, then he doesn't matter anymore. Am I talking in riddles? All right. So when it didn't matter, it now mattered to him. And when I got it, I mean, I went through the program, but it was not really about being a doctor anymore. It was just about, experiencing whatever this is. Not knowing that in order to be the president of the Bible college, I must have a doctorate. So it was not really about it mattering to me. It was about mattering to him for the others. You felt something? Because I feel something now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it's always about him and the others. And being an instrument for him to the others. I really wanted to have a Bible college. It really started in Biblion. When I did those Monday seminars, it was the beginning. You see, the way the Lord deals with me, he eases me into stuff, and then when I'm in it, then he tells me this is what you're into. Because if he told me before, then I would run. So he eases me into it, and he says, you know what this is? This is becoming some kind of educational or instructional situation. Why don't you just make it a school? And that's how it evolved. And then when Reverend Trish or Patricia McLeod came on board, who had all the credentials and the experience, I didn't. You see, when you flow with him, it's effortless. All I had to do was go to Drew and get the piece of paper. Because that's really all I got. That's all I had to do. Then I had to come back and set it up and then have the dean come and put it in place. You see, when you follow God, his yoke is easy. Now, if I had to do it myself, I would want to be the dean, the president, and work it all out. No, it is just evolving beyond my expertise. I'm just to play my part, and he'll do the rest. You know, when it's about us, we got to figure out everything. I just teach a class and get the reports and have my meetings and make sure that we maintain the philosophy. But the legwork is not being done because it is about him instructing his people biblically for the end time.
Sure. Actually, the vision for the Bible College, Beth Rafa Bible Institute, started many years ago. With Pastor, she's funny. When something is birthed in her, then it evolves. And what I mean by that is that it comes as the Lord, makes the timing correct, and he makes the resources. And, we just literally have walked into this. Many years ago, she used to have a bookstore down in Brooklyn called the Biblion Family Bookstore, and where knowledge and faith become one, where their tag was the tag. And she would fly in from all over the world and teach classes. Sanctification, spirituality and Christianity. I think there was a couple of more, the Holy Spirit. Just great, tremendous, and just loaded classes. We presently use those even at Beth Rafa, the church today, in our spiritual studies program. But when she was doing that back in the late 80s, little did any of us know, and probably her in particular, that it would evolve into a full-fledged seminary. And so it just kind of grew from that. The classes, like I said, people would come from miles around as she would just be committed and fly in on Monday evenings and teach these classes. People still talk about them today. And when she started the church back in 2001, then those same tapes and those books came with her. And we began to teach them in the spiritual studies program at our church. And we have it's just like a cycle, just like any other school right there on Sunday mornings. So we continue to use them. Out of those classes, we wrote other classes. And it just began to mushroom because this is a major teaching ministry. So it really took the foundation of what she had started at the Biblion Family Bookstore, brought it to Beth Rafa, and it continued. We have about 10 to 12 people teaching every Sunday morning, those very classes. And some of them we've taken into the Bible college, and some of them have not been. But we use them throughout our congregation with everybody that joins and even comes through the doors at Beth Rafa. And then back in 2005, at the end of the year, around November or December, we received an invitation to become an extension campus of another school. And because we were so just on fire about this teaching and the writing of courses, it was just a timing of God. And we began to transition those classes and classes like those into what we now call our own Beth Rafa Bible Institute. And we offer classes there right now under our seminary. The vision of the Bible Institute is, it really, the whole goal of the school is to reach people and teach them the gospel. She has a passion for teaching the unadulterated truth of the gospel. And that same passion has transferred itself into myself and everyone else that's affiliated with the college that actually works in the school and teaches as well. The vision is to make certain that we promote the gospel throughout the world by the technology mechanisms that we're able to use now, by the teaching and creating of DVDs, by the resident classes that we offer. We're passionate about that. And the other part of that is that we don't ever want people who really have a hunger and a thirst for righteousness and want to learn the Word of God to be excluded from the opportunity. So because of that, and because it's our own seminary, because I'll talk about that probably a little later, but the Bible Institute is able to offer these classes at very reasonable cost. We offer, we're able to do it. We sponsor students. We have some students that we simply barter services with. And because if they want to learn, we want to teach them. And that's truly the vision of it. And it has to be done, of course, in a spirit of excellence. You know, that's something that we absolutely promote. Well, we're walking into the future even as we speak. Earlier this year, January 2011, we were able to establish our very own Beth Rafa Christian College and Theological Seminary, Incorporated. And we're happy about that. So what started as an extension campus of another school has now extended away from that particular school, and we've established our own. So literally, Beth Rafa Bible Institute is now a satellite campus, the very first satellite campus of the newly established Beth Rafa Christian College and Theological Seminary, where we're licensed to confer degrees at the doctoral level, master's level, and at the bachelor's level. So that's where we are right now. We're working, we're still writing a lot of new courses and getting them up, as I said about the other ones. And it's just magnificent, because now what is happening is we find ourselves establishing campuses, not just writing courses now anymore. It's grown into establishing campuses. We literally just the other night had several people, probably about 15 people on a conference call with people from all over the country working, planning to establish a campus that we're looking at down in Tampa, Florida. So it has really mushroomed into now this full-fledged seminary, and we're excited about it because in 2012 we anticipate our very first graduation.
Let's talk a bit about, again, one of these extensions of your ministry, the emergence of Rafa Alliance, and the pastors who are now looking to you for tutelage.
Well, Elder Shane, again, the Lord, you know, he just moves me wherever. I'm just on the chessboard, and he's maneuvering me. Am I having a problem with that? No, because, you know, he takes me where he will, where he wants to, or where he wills. Pastor Sheila Benton, at that time she was Sheila Knight, a friend of mine. I met her in Cincinnati, maybe about 11, 12 years ago. And we hooked up. We knew each other, casually. But I met her and we just connected. She went through some very difficult things personally, and then she said, the Lord called me to preach and minister. She had been preaching. And so I took, at that time, Pastor Wayne Powell down and some members, and we ordained her, and she started her church. And first we ordained her to preach, and then we went down and she found a place and we installed her. Now I have no church. I'm still evangelizing. I'm still teaching in the bookstore, but I'm now ordaining and installing. See the backwards of it? See what I'm saying? But if he didn't do that with me, I would never even want to be involved. But she's a friend. That's how she hooked me. He hooked me up. She's a friend. She loves the Lord. She wants to do the will of the Lord. And I'm walking her through, and we're going through now. And she's got a building. She's got people. And I'm helping to ordain her. First Church. Now, she's installed in her church. The church's name has been changed. It's now the Greater Bethel. So I have one church that I am overseeing without a church of my own. See what I'm saying? And then, of course, Beth Rafa started. And we ministered to her for about maybe 9 years. And then it's been a year now that pastors have been coming to me and saying, I need you to cover me. I need instruction. I need support. I need guidance. No, we don't have a cathedral. We don't have a campus yet. So to me, it's ironic. Why don't you go to these big mega churches that can write you a fat check and give you a building and send you on your way? They said, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for nurturing, guidance, correction, all of that. And so they kept bothering me and pulling on me. And the Lord said, you already have Pastor Sheila. You're already in it. You might as well just ease right on into where I want you to be. So we have about seven churches that we're overseeing. And then last year, officially, we started the Rafa Alliance. Now, it's not an organization, it's an alliance. Churches of like-mindedness coming together, supporting each other, working together towards a common goal, even though they have their individual churches, their own mission statements, their own directives. But we come together because we have the same desire for the Lord, the same understanding of what the church should be doing in the world right now. So we have like-mindedness, commitment, and relationship. So that's what it is right now. I don't know what it will be 5 years from now, but right now, that's where the Lord has me. And I'm not asking too many questions because I might get answers.
With that said, and this would be the last question of our session, what do you see or perceive that you can share with us? And I'm sure there are many things that you probably could, but what could you share with us, with your church, with those who are part of your ministry, who follow your ministry? What's the future? What does the future hold? And what are the next steps and phases for you, both in the church, your personal ministry, evangelism? What do you believe that the future holds?
Well, I think the future holds just what Paul and John saw, in preparing the church in the first century to go into the second century. They mentored and groomed leaders and people. That's the first thing. They fought against heresy to maintain the purity of the gospel. That's the second thing. Number 3 is, the economic crisis really is a blessing to the church because when we have so much, we're so separate from each other. We've gotten to the place, in the last couple of decades where everyone was individually blessed and not necessarily community minded. The one thing about the church that we have missed is it's a household of faith. We're a family. This economic crisis has forced church, I'm sure other communities also, to become more sensitive to the need of others. Like any other crisis, if there's a hurricane or a flood, people become more benevolent, more compassionate, bringing food to each other, the economic crisis has reduced us to a commonality that we need each other. More people in my church are living in other people's homes instead of living in shelters. More people are taking care of other people's children than being in foster care. It has reduced us to become a caring family, and as Paul called it, the household of faith. So my responsibility now is to teach people how to be a part of the community of believers. Okay, not just mentoring leaders, not just creating these wonderful ministries, but teaching us that we are interconnected, joint supplying joint, and that we have a responsibility to each other. And then last but not least, we have a responsibility to the world. The Lord told me, you're a preacher, a teacher, and a missionary. So my assignment is also to prepare the church and encourage the church to reach the world globally, which can be done through technology. We don't even have to get on the plane anymore to reach the world. Through medical mission, through education, through programs. One of the things in case of a crisis, in case we have another, God forbid, 9/11, how can the church be more equipped to minister to the community in the time of crisis? Do we have blankets? Do we have flashlights? Do we have cots? Do we have Band-Aids? So just looking at the church, overall, what we should be focusing on and how we should prepare the next generation to be biblically sound. And if Jesus tarries to take the church into the next generation untarnished.